Summer's supposed to be the easy season. So why are so many people quietly Googling a therapist between summer Fridays? Because more daylight doesn't fix the hard stuff. Sometimes it just turns the volume up. Grow does therapy differently. Therapy is not only for when you're in crisis. Grow Therapy is here for all the moments when you decide you want more. More support, more clarity, more tools. Mental health isn't a destination you reach, it's something you build, and Grow makes that easier. Grow connects you with thousands of high-quality licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. The therapist you want takes your insurance on Grow. Grow accepts over 125 insurance plans. Sessions average $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/book now today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/book now. growtherapy.com/book now. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
That refresh you've been putting off until the right deal came along? It's here! Wayfair's Black Friday and July sale is happening now, so you can finally get the style you've been waiting for less. Get up to 80% off area rugs and up to 60% off outdoor and bedroom furniture. Shop Wayfair's huge selection of styles and find the piece to fit your style, budget, and space. Plus, free shipping. Black Friday in July ends July 27th. Shop today at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
How should we view Sybil Ludington's story with all that we do know about it? And with all that we don't know about it?
Well, I think we have to say that there's a lot of legend part of it. And that legend always has a grain of truth in it. And then it also has a grain of wishful thinking in it.
You've reached American History Hotline. You ask the questions, we get the answers. Leave a message.
Hey there, American History Hotliners. Bob Crawford here. Thrilled to be joining you again for another episode of American History Hotline, the show where you ask the questions. And the best way to get us a question is always to record a video or a voice memo on your phone and email it to americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. That's americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. Okay, today's question comes to us from Greta in New Zealand. She writes, growing up in the U.S., I developed a love of American history, and recently I found out about the fascinating story of Sybil Ludington. She was definitely overlooked in the history books, in my opinion, and not given much credit. Would you consider doing an episode on her? Thanks so much, and much love from New Zealand. Much love from the U.S., Greta, and thanks for the suggestion. Well, joining me now to talk about Sybil Ludington is Karen Romano Young. She's an author who wrote the book Sybil Ludington, Revolutionary War Writer. Karen, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We are thrilled to have you, and I am really excited to talk about this because there was a cartoon TV series that that my wife and I discovered when my children were very young. I'm talking like, in the months old, and like 1 year old, and it was called Liberty Kids. And I could not wait until they were old enough. We bought the DVDs. I think it came out in the 90s or early 2000s. The voices were like Charles Kuralt and Sylvester Stallone. It was like a star-studded cast. And the main character, one of the main characters of this cartoon series about the Revolutionary War was none other than Sybil Ludington.
What?
Yes.
I've never heard of
by
it.
a company named Cookie Jar. I can't believe you've never heard of this. You need to go immediately after we get off this conversation and order this series for yourself because you will absolutely love it. And this has formed my whole opinion, and this is the scope of my knowledge of Sybil Ludington is based on this series, which I love to this
Sure.
day. And yes, my kids eventually did grow into watching this series, and we watched it for many years, and now they're sick of it, and now they've outgrown it. So, Aaron.
These kinds of things make such a difference to kids. They give them what I call the hook of history.
Yes.
Just like
Yes.
grab you with that hook and pull you into somebody else's reality that's been long gone 300 years ago and make it come alive for you.
That's what we're trying to do here today.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's the goal of this show. That is the goal. We are on the same mission. Okay, so many people obviously don't know Sybil Ludington.
Okay.
I've seen her referred to as the female Paul Revere. How does that characterization sit with you?
I would rather say that Paul Revere was the male Sybil Ludington.
Yes.
You knew that was coming, Bob, but
Yeah.
Paul Revere himself did write a number of disclaimers and descriptors of what happened to him, on the 18th of April in 75. And the way that Longfellow, who wrote the poem that made him famous, described that night is very different from the way Revere describes that night. For one thing, he only went, so he was letting the people in Lexington and Concord know that the British were coming and that they were going to come and invade their towns and start the Revolutionary War. And they went 12 to 14 miles. There's just some debate there. He had a bunch of people helping him. Yes, somebody did look up in the Old North Church Tower and see that there were two bells, one of by land and two of by sea. And then people did go off and say the British were coming. But it was on a far different scale from what Sybil Ludington did. What Sybil Ludington did, her father was a colonel in a regiment of Patriot Minutemen. And they had just come back from a training expedition, and he sent all 421 of his soldiers home on furlough because it was springtime and they needed to plant their fields. Right after that, the British came marching in near where I live. I live in Bethel, Connecticut. The British came sailing up to the nearest shore, which is Westport, Connecticut, Campo Beach, and they marched up into these hills to get to Danbury, which is just one town beyond where I live and where all the supplies were. And they burned Danbury, burned all the supplies, took what they wanted, got drunk on all the rum, and then they headed west to meet up with other soldiers that were in the Hudson Highlands. The Ludingtons lived in between. They could see the fires in Danbury from their houses. They knew that they needed to come and fight back the British, even though there were 421 of them and 2,000 of the British. So he needed to call those 421 men back in to muster and then to lead them on. But if he went himself to do it, Colonel Henry Ludington, he'd be exhausted by morning and he wouldn't be able to march off and do whatever he needed to do. So the question was, who could ride and call out all the militia? And it was his 16-year-old daughter, Sybil, who did it.
Amazing.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
What's up, fam? It's sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together.
We're breaking down the biggest headlines, the viral moments, and the stories everyone's talking about across women's sports.
From game-changing performances to culture-shifting conversations, we'll give you our takes, our debates, and a few laughs along the way.
Because everyone watches women's sports. Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy is essential, and it's also elusive. But now, there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. If you're craving inspiration to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Open your free iHeartRadio app, search Joy 101, and listen now. Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb is presented by CVS.
I'm Jake Brennan, and on the Disgraceland podcast, I explore the wild lives of rock stars and unbelievable true crime stories from music history. These are the stories you haven't heard, the kind you'll end up telling someone else. Like the time Paul McCartney spent in a notorious prison, or the bizarre crime Lady Gaga is accused of, or that time Blondie's Debbie Harry escaped Ted Bundy. Listen to Disgraceland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My first guest is Paris Hilton, Shakira, Luke, and Yerin. Have surprises?
Many surprises.
Welcome to the Sweet 305 podcast, where the group chat comes to life.
What up? You're the only person I know that loves a yellow Starburst. It's lemonade.
This is Sweet 305. Here, oversharing is encouraged. Listen to Sweet 305 with Lele Pons on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's the Jonas Brothers. This week on the podcast, Hey Jonas, we're hanging out with Michael Bublé. After Kevin's recent interesting confession about Michael, we figured there's only one thing to do. We must invite Michael Bublé on the podcast, and we want to know what's on his Sexy Time playlist.
You know, I did an interview, and they're like, have you heard about this Jonas Brothers thing? And they were like, what did you think of it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's reciprocal.
We talk about Kevin's confession, Michael's reaction, and a whole lot more. Our conversation with Michael Bublé is out now. Listen to Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Were the Ludingtons always hardcore patriots?
No.
Okay.
They were not. Henry Ludington was on the British side, the loyalist side, partway through the French and Indian War. And at some point, he turned and moved over to the patriot side. So there was a bounty on his head. And these kids grew up. Sybil's the oldest of 12. The oldest 3 were girls. Boys were not old enough to be soldiers at all. These girls were old enough to be soldiers, and they were on it in the way of eldest daughters, really helping out their family. And they, took care of the farming. They took care of everything that had to happen. When he was off fighting battles or training his men, they took care of their mom, who had, a baby in arms. And they even fought off the soldiers that came from the loyalist side to try to get the bounty that was on their father's head and were going to invade their house. These were some, I don't know can I say badass on your show?
You can say badass, yeah.
Yes. So these girls are known for having helped out with, as everybody did, all of the militiamen were dressed in homespun. They did not have the beautiful red coats and the helmets and the good equipment that the British soldiers had. They had to make everything themselves or come up with whatever muskets they could have. So they were working very hard to make coats for their militiamen. They were weaving, and all the women were dyeing all the material blue and cutting it and making it into these jackets. And they had this stuff all over the house when somebody realized that there was a bunch of guys in the woods who were coming for their father. It was dusk. They lit some candles, and they put these coats on, and they walked around in front of the windows so that if you were outside in the woods, it looked like the militia were all there already. Yeah, this is the kind of girls they were.
So where does this come from? Like, was Henry Ludington, did he just realize, like, this is what we have to do, and these are the people that we have to do it with are my daughters, and we're going to make this work? Or what? Like, did he have to be convinced of their abilities? Like, do you know how this was accurate? Because this is contrary to this time period, right?
You might say,
prove me wrong. Yeah, tell me I'm wrong. That's fine.
Contrary to what we have heard, about the time period. One of the really interesting things about this time period, and it's really borne out in this book,
Yes.
my book, is how much they relied on intelligence. George Washington was huge on this. He said, there's no way we're outnumbering these soldiers. The only way we're going to beat the British is through intelligence. We have to be ahead of them. We have to know what's going on, and we have to be sneaky. And along with John Jay, who was a big New York lawyer and who lived in the same area as the Ludingtons, Washington had spy rings that went all around New York City that involved women. There was one woman whose laundry hanging in her shoreside house indicated where troops were and if it was safe to land and all this kind of thing. We know her name, but we don't know the name of a whole lot of other women. So in this story, there is a slave girl who shares some intelligence. There is an older woman who is the mother of two young men who are in this militia, and she's got a dog in the fight. She wants to help them out. And, she goes to a mill in disguise and passes some information along. And there's a whole lot of coding going on. Stuff that kids really love about this book is all the different methods for sharing messages that you could use. Whether you've got a letter that has a cutout on the front. In the book, it's a Valentine, so there's a heart cutout. And if you place the cutout over the letter, it shows words that have a message. There's other ones where you have a particular book that you've got one and I've got one, and we've both gone through and put an underline on the page just randomly. It looks like somebody was taking notes. And all that anyone would get as a code was numbers. And they would know to go to the page in the book that they both had and see which word was underlined, and they would put a message together that way. So all of this stuff, and, I grew up loving codes.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up writing letters. I grew up sneaking around and leaving messages under rocks and all this kind of thing that kids love to do. Girls love to do it just as much as anybody else. The fact that you were a girl in this time meant that, the classic thing where you're supposed to be home doing your needlework or whatever, while that may be true, that wasn't always possible. Girls had to go off and do lots of errands. They had to be in public a lot. And they didn't have such high expectations placed on them. So it was easy for them to slide under the radar a great deal.
What do we know about, you talked about 3 daughters.
Yes.
So what's the birth order here? Where does Sybil Ludington fit in with her sisters? Is she the oldest? Is she in the middle? Where is she?
She's the oldest.
She's the oldest.
So
okay.
She's the oldest. So she's the big boss girl, and she has a sister who's a year younger. And then she has another sister who is, so they're 16 and 15. And I think Molly, the next one down, is 11 or 12.
And was it her father's idea to send her, or did she, as far as we know, did she convince her father that she had to do it, that she could do it, or did he say, Sybil, this is what you need to do?
Well, this is an interesting thing about Sybil Ludington, is that we know she did this. We know how many people were in the militia. We know it all happened on one night. We know it took 40 miles. We even know the route that she took. But we don't know all of the particulars of it. We don't know if she said, I can't, I regret that I only have one life to give for my militia, or something.
Right. Was there a rallying cry? Do we know that she had a rallying cry?
Well, she said, muster at Ludington's, the British are coming. Yeah. But that was the message. You all have to come down and get together and we're all going to march off. But we don't know enough about her in this particular instance. What we do know about her comes from other stories about her, such as this thing where she and Becky and Molly and the mom put the militia coats on and pretended that the house was full of guys and that they shouldn't come invade them. We know that she could light a campfire in the woods by shooting a musket.
Wow.
Which is the kind of thing, it's kind of like learning to spin a basketball on one finger.
Yeah.
It's, the cool girls can do this. They had to learn how to use muskets. They had to go out and hunt, right? Just like anybody in this time would go out and hunt for, little creatures for dinner. And she also had to have knowledge of a musket because of the situation in the territory, where it was just loyalists on one side and patriots on the other side, and people who were pretending to be one thing to fool the other side, and going back and forth, and spies who were double agents pretending to be loyal to one side but secretly spying on everyone, and a lot of this stuff was going on. You had people called cowboys, 2 words, and skinners, who would go around and steal livestock and then sell it back to you, and sell your identity to, and tell people they were going to tell the folks you were a loyalist if you didn't pay to get your livestock back. So you needed a musket. There was a lot going on.
Right. So do we know like what happens after this battle? Like, did the militia win this showdown with the British?
Well, yeah. So I've already told you how they marched in and they went to Danbury, and they got good and drunk, and they were up all night, and they were going to go and march over toward the Hudson Highlands and meet up with another regiment and, wreak all kinds of havoc. But they were met by Ludington's troops. And so they went back a different way. They got pinned down. They were, the British marching along, and these soldiers were outnumbered, and they were up in the trees and, shooting horses out from under people and things. And in the end, they chased the British all the way back to the beach. And, a boat came along and picked them up, and they got away, but there was no more going across New York and meeting up with the other guys.
What's up, fam? I'm sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together and iHeart Women's Sports.
Because let's be real, women's sports is giving us way too much to talk about these days.
The highlights, the rivalries, the breakout stars, the moments that take over your entire timeline.
And the conversations that start during the game and somehow keep going all week.
Every week, we're breaking down the biggest stories across women's sports.
We'll give you our takes, our debates, and probably a few disagreements.
We'll talk to athletes, celebrate big moments, and get into what's happening on and off the field, court, track, and beyond.
Because we're not just interested in what happened, we're interested in why everyone's talking about it. Because everyone watches women's sports. So if you're already a fan,
or you're just getting into the game, there's a seat for you right here.
Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Hoda Kotb, host of the podcast Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb. Okay, if you know me, you know this. I'm always searching for inspiration, for support, and useful tools to help maximize joy. So this podcast lets us uncover all of that together. We're going to have these meaningful conversations with the world's most fascinating people, like when actress Olivia Munn shared how she overcame fierce health challenges that she never saw coming.
I've gone through breast cancer and then helped my mother through breast cancer, and that was more difficult. There's a lot of people who understand postpartum depression. I was not prepared for postpartum anxiety.
Olympic champ Shawn Johnson revealed why she had no choice but to be a gymnast.
There was something about gymnastics that was intoxicating to me. It's given me a belief that we all have one of those treasures inside of us. We just have to find it.
Listen to Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My first guest is Paris Hilton, Shakira, Luke and Yerin, Samira y Gracie. I'm so excited.
On the bouncy bed.
You have surprises?
Many surprises.
Welcome to Suite 305, where the group chat comes to life. What up? Es como que una forma de decir como, hola amiga, hola mejor amiga, hola hermana, what up?
Mira, nunca lo había hablado con nadie. Excepto con mis hijos. Mis hijos sí saben. Yes.
Sé mi amante.
Uf. Punch. Qué increíble. Ya, la telenovela.
You're the only person I know that loves a yellow starburst. It's lemonade.
No hay alguien que te falta, como que tú dices, me gustaría colaborar con esta persona. This is Sweet 305. Listen to Sweet 305 with Lele Pons as part of My Cultura podcast network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's the Jonas Brothers. This week on the podcast, Hey Jonas, we're hanging out with the one, the only, and the one, Michael Bublé.
You guys, I'm genuinely a huge fan. Like, it's funny, you know, I made a whole thing about doing this TikTok where I got you guys to sign the guitar, but right. It was real. Like, we listen to you in the car all the time. Like, it literally is hanging up with all your signatures.
Wow. I am so honored. After Kevin's recent, let's call it interesting confession about Michael, I had a feeling this wasn't going to be going away. We figured there was only one thing to do. We must invite Michael Bublé on the podcast, and we want to know what's on his Sexy Time playlist.
You know, I did an interview, and they're like, have you heard about this Jonas Brothers thing? And they were like, what did you think of it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's reciprocal. Like, what a man got to do? What a man got to do?
We talk about Kevin's confession, Michael's reaction, and a whole lot more. Do you have a hockey rink in your house?
I do.
Our conversation with Michael Bublé is out now. Listen to Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jake Brennan, and on the Disgraceland podcast, I explore the wild lives of rock stars and unbelievable true crime stories from music history. These are the stories you haven't heard, the kind you'll end up telling someone else. Like the time Paul McCartney spent in one of the world's most notorious prisons. Imagine that. You're Paul McCartney. It's 1980. You're an ex-Beatle, and you're doing time in one of Japan's worst prisons, right there alongside Yakuza gangsters, and for a ridiculous charge. Or the bizarre crime Lady Gaga is accused of. Who is the artist Lady Gaga is being accused of doing the unthinkable to, after allegedly stealing her music and style to become famous? And what about that time Blondie's Debbie Harry escaped a serial killer? The man who had given her that ride she barely escaped from was Ted Bundy. Listen to Disgraceland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is American History Hotline. I'm your host, Bob Crawford. Today, my guest is Karen Romano Young. She's an author who wrote the book Sybil Ludington, Revolutionary War Writer. Remember to send us your burning questions about American history. Record yourself using the voice memo app on your phone and email it to americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. That's americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. Now, back to the show. Okay, so regardless of like the truth of what she did and everything we know about it and the things we don't know about it, when does the story of Sybil Ludington start to become popularized?
Not for a long time, Bob.
Okay, well.
Sybil went on after this and married a soldier and had a son and ran a tavern and for various reasons died in poverty because her husband was not able to, when he died, she was not able to pick up his pension because she didn't have a marriage certificate. They had moved around.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Was she involved in any other battles or any other during the war after this? Was she further involved in the war? You say she married a soldier.
She married a soldier. We don't know. The only way that we know anything about Sybil, this is a really important distinction.
Yeah.
It wasn't talked about right after it happened. She didn't become a big hero. You know, she wasn't given some kind of award for loyalty or for speed on a horse or anything like that. It was kept very quiet, and I'll go back to why in a minute. But it was something, along with the musket starting a fire, along with the soldiers trying to get the bounty that was on the head of her father. Family stories. And in 1907, Henry Ludington's grandson, Louis Patrick, went to a writer and said, I want the memoirs of my grandfather published. I want to tell you what I know about him and the rest of his family, because it's about to be lost to posterity. It hadn't been written down. There are a lot of historical documents and things. There is a story or an account of the Battle of Ridgefield, which was when they fought the soldiers back. There are clear accounts of the British coming and marching in and burning Danbury and all of that. But there wasn't very much about Sybil at all. And until this memoir was published, because this grandson, remembered the stories that the family had told about Aunt Sybil. And he wanted her story remembered. And at that point, the Daughters of the American Revolution picked it up and started to share it around. In 1935, they put up marker signs all along her route. And when Anna Huntington, who was a sculptor who lived in this area, daughter of one of the railroad magnates who lived in this area, became a sculptor and wanted to do a sculpture of some famous patriot in this area. She heard about Sybil Ludington. So my kids grew up going to the Danbury Public Library and seeing her statue of Sybil in front of the library. She's on a horse coming down a hill and her hair is streaming behind her and she's screeching, muster at Ludington's, the British are coming. And my kids just said, who is that? And I didn't know. So, that's how I found out, is from this statue. In 1975, they did a postage stamp about her. They all started to find out this story, but so little is known. And there were so many lurid kind of tales told. Her horse was named Star, and she rode in a dress. No, she rode in breeches. Her hair was streaming behind her. No, she had it pulled up and she was disguised as a man. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. Some say she said, father must jump on that horse and ride through the night. And some said, no, I need you to do this, kid. Or, others said she was one of 6 people who was supposed to do it in a chain, and she just took it over and did the whole thing. Nobody has any idea. What's interesting to me is to say, why didn't they talk about it at the time? And I think that the reason they didn't talk about it at the time was the reason that they didn't talk about a lot of women at the time. Women did all kinds of things. Their sons and daughters are on the line in this situation. They were trying to, have freedom for their country just as badly as the men were, even if they weren't personally able to put their lives on the line, although I believe that they did. I just think that, historians don't go looking for those little stories. They write about battles, and they write about the colonels, and they write about the people whose names are on the list. It's very easy. It's very easy to go back and find every single person who is in this regiment, down to the lowliest fife boy. But could you find anything else about their families? No. So there's a lot we don't know, and that's where the fascination of this whole tale came in, was coming up with who else lived in the area that they were worried about, and who else lived in the area, like the Quakers, who were allies. And it was fascinating to come up with, once you knew what the parameters of the story were, to kind of go, well, what might have happened? Let's make this a good story that seems to be going along with the character that we know that this person had, which is independent and fierce and strong and a badass boss girl.
Thinking about this area that you're talking about, one name comes to mind. And am I right in thinking Benedict Arnold also came from this area?
He was. They called out a number of different regiments to fight the British back. Benedict Arnold came from New Haven and brought his men with him. He did not turn coat until after this.
Right. So, but he knew Henry Ludington. We can assume.
Or at least he's that guy over there running that bunch of guys, and I'm over here running this bunch of guys. At least that much. Yeah.
So, what you're just talking about, I get conflicted as a historian. On the one hand, I want the cold, hard facts,
Mhm.
but I also understand the value of a good American story, especially one that includes female heroism and like you said, the hook of history
Mhm.
gets kids interested, pulls people in. How should we view Sybil Ludington's story with all that we do know about it, and with all that we don't know about it?
Well, I think we have to say that there's a lot of legend part of it, and that legend always has a grain of truth in it, and then it also has a grain of wishful thinking in it. And you can see that if you go through. I worked a lot with the Putnam County historian, Sally Cipher, who had a lot of opinions about this and who shared with me old copies of all these articles that came out, between the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when she was starting to come back into the limelight. And people just wrote all kinds of, whatever appealed to them about this story to fill in the spaces. I did the same thing, there's no other way to do it other than to try to fill in the spaces. So when it says based on a true story, all the facts that we know are there. But what else? And it was very fun to do this story because I live in the area. And we
Right.
could go
Yes.
out and follow her path. We drove where their family's home used to be, where their mill used to be, and we looked across the fields, and there, sure enough, you can see the steeples of Danbury. And, right near the public library where the statue is. And then we rode through the whole countryside and just imagined. And it says there was an Indian village, up that road. That's interesting. They're not there anymore, or are they? And have just assimilated. Where were the houses of the militiamen? And what are all these other houses that are between them? Are they all loyalists? Are they people that don't have men of fighting age? You know, so you just kind of have to figure it all out going along. It's fun.
What do your kids think of the book?
Well, my oldest, who is an American Girl from way back with her American Girl dolls, and who just has an incredible imagination, drove this route with me and pointed out a whole lot of things that I didn't figure out on my own. And even things like, okay, we've done the whole route. Now we're going to take the shortcut back to Bethel. We're driving on Quaker Hill Road. Why is it called Quaker Hill Road? I went and looked that up because that's where all the Quakers lived. And it's the road between here and there. That would have been a secret little passage to go through. And nobody's suspecting the Quakers of anything, but they might just be passing messages along. They might just show up with a horse when yours is exhausted on your ride. And that's how I got the horse to be called Star, even though I wasn't going to go along with the apocryphal story that her horse was called Star. Yeah. So.
Well, your assignment, Karen, if you choose to accept it, is to look up Liberty Kids.
I will.
And watch the whole series, and then we will reconvene and we will debrief.
That would be great. I think that's incredible that I didn't know about that. That's funny. And I bet Sally Cipher doesn't know either. And
it is just tremendous. Yes. I personally love it. And there's some apocryphal parts of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, they pick up on stuff like that. But,
yeah.
As you're going forward and you're hearing about girls and women doing things, it's not just think about how their stories were hidden, but think about what they brought to the situation. What kind of skills did they have that the boys might not have had? Even if it meant can slip through this whole group of people and nobody thinks I know anything and I can pass a message along and,
Well, we always need to remember of that time what Abigail Adams said to her husband. Remember the ladies.
Remember the ladies. Absolutely. Yes.
I've been talking to Karen Romano Young. She's written many books, including Sybil Ludington, Revolutionary War Rider. Check out her entire catalog online. She's got a ton of great books. Karen, thanks for joining us on American History Hotline.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's been a pleasure. And thank you to Greta in New Zealand. I'd love to know if you lived around here and saw that statue too.
You've been listening to American History Hotline, a production of iHeart Podcasts and Scratch Track Productions. The show's executive producer is James Morrison. Our executive producers from iHeart are Jordan Runtal and Jason English. Original music composed by me, Bob Crawford. Please keep in touch. Our email is americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. If you like the show, please tell your friends and leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Bob Crawford. Feel free to hit me up on social media to ask a history question or to let me know what you think of the show. You can find me at Bob Crawford Base. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week.
What's up, fam? It's sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together.
We're breaking down the biggest headlines, the viral moments, and the stories everyone's talking about across women's sports.
From game-changing performances to culture-shifting conversations, we'll give you our takes, our debates, and a few laughs along the way.
Because everyone watches women's sports. Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy is essential and it's also elusive. But now there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. If you're craving inspiration to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Open your free iHeartRadio app, search Joy 101, and listen now. Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb is presented by CVS.
I'm Jake Brennan, and on my podcast, Disgraceland, I tell the stories behind music's biggest names, like how the story of the Foo Fighters isn't just about music, it's about grief, shock, and the moment everything changed. Imagine that. You're in the biggest band on the planet, as Dave Grohl was in 1994 in Nirvana, and the phone rings, and you learn that your singer, your friend, the reluctant voice of a generation, Kurt Cobain, is dead. Listen to Disgraceland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My first guest is Paris Hilton, Shakira, Luke, and Yerin. Have surprises?
Many surprises.
Welcome to the Sweet 305 podcast, where the group chat comes to life.
What up? You're the only person I know that loves a yellow Starburst. It's lemonade.
This is Sweet 305. Here, oversharing is encouraged.
Listen to Sweet 305 with Lele Pons on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's the Jonas Brothers. This week on the podcast, Hey Jonas, we're hanging out with Michael Bublé. After Kevin's recent interesting confession about Michael, we figured there's only one thing to do. We must invite Michael Bublé on the podcast, and we want to know what's on his Sexy Time playlist.
You know, I did an interview, and they're like, have you heard about this Jonas Brothers thing? And they were like, what did you think of it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's reciprocal.
We talk about Kevin's confession, Michael's reaction, and a whole lot more. Our conversation with Michael Bublé is out now. Listen to Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.